You're not broken, you're just hiding something. There is a moment, always in the quiet, when the noise fades and the world softens just enough for you to feel it. That weight, that edge, that truth, the one you keep pushing down. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's not loud, it doesn't scream, but it sits there just beneath the surface of every smile you fake and every excuse you rehearse. You've been running from it for years, not because it's dangerous, but because it's real. And realness threatens the version of yourself you've built to survive. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Now let's begin. You don't have to be brave, you just have to be here. Sometimes the thing we fear most is not being heard again. It's being seen. We live in a culture that glorifies curated identities. You are allowed to be confident, clever, driven. Just don't be too raw, don't be confused, don't bleed in public. But the truth is, healing doesn't happen in curated spaces. It happens in chaos, in mess. In the moment when you finally stop running, that moment is now. There's a truth inside you, not the truth of your resume or your accomplishments or even your pain story, but the deeper one, the one you whisper to yourself at 3 a.m. when no one's watching, the one that says, I'm tired of pretending I'm okay. I'm scared I'll never feel seen for who I really am. I don't even know who I am anymore. That's the truth, the real one. And no, it's not glamorous, it won't go viral, but it's yours and it's sacred. The Buddha never said, follow the truth only if it's beautiful. He said there is no path to liberation that bypasses reality. And the reality is, most of us have buried a part of ourselves under layers of habit, fear, performance, and protection. Not because we're cowards, but because we were never shown how to stay with discomfort long enough to hear what it's trying to say. That's what this section is about. It's about pausing the performance. It's about sitting, not fixing. It's about finally meeting the part of yourself that's been waiting, not to be fixed, but to be felt. You can tell a lot about a person by what they avoid. Some avoid silence. Some avoid stillness. Some avoid intimacy or vulnerability or truth that might shatter the persona they've crafted. But what's beneath that avoidance is usually not weakness. It's a wounded version of you that learned long ago. Telling the truth was dangerous. So you smiled instead of cried. You rationalized instead of screamed. You worked harder instead of asking for help. You became excellent at being who people needed you to be. So much so that you forgot who you actually are. And yet, the truth never leaves. It waits. It waits in your insomnia, in the resentment you can't explain, in the quiet grief you carry without language, in the mirror when you stop wearing your survival mask long enough to just look. So here's the invitation. What would happen if you stopped avoiding it? What if today, instead of shoving it down again, you let it rise? Even if it's awkward, even if it's inconvenient, even if it cracks the image you've tried so hard to keep together. Because maybe, just maybe, the life you're pretending to have together is costing you the life you're actually meant to live. The Dharma doesn't demand that you be perfect. It asks that you be present. In truth is the doorway. And until you walk through it, you'll keep looping. Same patterns, same pain, new faces, same outcomes, different cities, same loneliness. You'll keep trying to outrun what lives inside you, never realizing you are the one who holds the key. So ask yourself now, quietly, what is the truth I've been avoiding? Say it, even if your voice shakes, because the truth you're avoiding is the very thing that will set you free. You didn't choose avoidance, it chose you. Long before you even had the language to call it that. Avoidance is not a character flaw. It's a survival instinct dressed up in daily habits. It's that inner whisper that says, don't go there, it's safer here. And when you grow up in a world where truth is punished, misunderstood, or ignored, avoidance becomes your armor. But here's the paradox. The very thing you use to protect yourself from pain is the thing that quietly perpetuates it. Let me ask you something. How many times have you known exactly what you needed to say, but swallowed it instead? How often have you stayed in a situation long past its expiration date, not because you were okay, but because leaving meant facing something you weren't ready to name? We avoid what feels too big to hold, too tangled to untie, too risky to reveal. And sometimes, That makes sense. Avoidance has intelligence. It steps in when your nervous system screams, "Not safe." It's what kept you from breaking apart when breaking open felt too dangerous. But over time, that safety becomes a cage, and the longer you stay there, the smaller your world becomes. You start crafting a life around the avoidance, a relationship that looks fine but feels like quiet suffocation, a job that pays the bills but starves the soul, a daily routine that numbs but never nourishes. And then you wonder why joy feels far away. You're not lost, you're buried, under layers of unspoken grief, hidden fears, and stories you told yourself to survive. In Buddhism, this is called avijja, ignorance. Not as stupidity, but as a turning away from truth. It's the mind's default setting to protect the self-image. The inner slogan becomes, "As long as I don't look, I won't feel." But reality doesn't work like that. What you ignore doesn't disappear. It builds pressure. And one day it explodes, not always in dramatic ways, but in subtle erosion. In the fatigue that has no medical cause, in the disconnection you can't fix with vacations or affirmations, in the vague sense that you're living someone else's life. Here's the catch. You don't have to consciously choose suffering for it to become your default. All you have to do is avoid truth long enough. And truth doesn't chase you. It waits. It waits in the quiet moments, when the screen turns off, when the noise dies down, when the distractions lose their shine. And suddenly, there it is, the ache, the memory, the thing you promised you'd deal with later. Why is it so hard to face? Because truth is rarely polite. It doesn't knock gently. It doesn't wait until you feel ready. It rips through the layers you've neatly arranged and says, "I'm still here." Avoidance feels safer because it keeps the identity intact. Because if you admit the truth, that you're unhappy, that you're lonely, that you settled, that you're scared, what happens next? Who will you be when the mask comes off? That's the real fear. Not the truth itself, but the version of you who must emerge after it. And that's where transformation begins. The Buddha didn't teach that pain is the problem. He taught that clinging to illusions, to safety, to avoidance is the source of suffering. When you stop clinging, you start seeing. When you start seeing, you start healing. And when you start healing, life doesn't get easier, but it gets real. And real is where peace lives. So the question is no longer, why am I avoiding? The question is, am I willing to live a life built on truth, even if it costs me the comfort of the known? Because yes, truth will shake your world, but it will also set you free. You don't just wear a mask for the world, you wear it for yourself. And after a while it fits so snug, so natural, that you forget you ever put it on in the first place. You look in the mirror and say, "This is who I am." But something underneath whispers, "No, it's who you've become." Let's speak plainly. Most people are not lying to others, they're lying to themselves. And the lie sounds like this: "I'm fine. I don't need anyone. This is just how life is." Better not to rock the boat. Other people have it worse. Each phrase, a brick in the wall between your heart and your truth. You build the mask in pieces. A smile that hides exhaustion. A joke that deflects pain. Competence that covers up emptiness. Generosity that masks the fear of being unwanted. Silence that pretends to be strength. And soon you are living a character, well-dressed, well-liked, even admired, but hollow, like a house with locked rooms and fading wallpaper. You say yes when you mean no, because you were taught that your needs are an inconvenience. You stay silent when you want to scream because being easy to be around got you love when being honest didn't. And you show up for others with grace, but inside you're collapsing. Because somewhere along the way, you learned that being useful was safer than being real. But here's the tragedy of the mask. It doesn't just protect you from pain, it protects you from intimacy. Because no one can truly love you if they can't see you. And how can they see you if you've forgotten where you're hiding? Buddhism doesn't tell you to rip the mask off with brute force. It invites you to become gently curious. Who am I when I'm not performing? What am I afraid people will see if I stop pretending? And most importantly, can I hold space for the raw, unedited version of me? Because that version, bruised, messy, uncertain, is the doorway to liberation. The Buddha taught anatta, non-self, not to erase you, but to free you from clinging to a false identity. The mask is a bundle of stories. I am this kind of person. I don't cry. I always cope. I don't need help. But those stories, they are not your nature. They are your training. And the good news is this: anything learned can be unlearned. You may be scared that the moment you drop the mask, everything will fall apart. It might, but it also might be the first time anything real begins. Because the raw truth of you, the vulnerable, wide-eyed, trembling human under the armor, isn't weak. It's sacred, it's alive, and it is dying to breathe again. You don't have to expose yourself to the world all at once. Start small. One moment of honesty with someone safe. One refusal to pretend you're okay. One pause before the automatic "I'm fine." And each time you do that, the mask thins. Not in a dramatic collapse, but in quiet crumbles. Until one day someone looks at you, not the role you play, not the face you've practiced, and says, "I see you." And you believe them. You don't need to become someone new. You need to remember who you were before the mask taught you to forget. And when you do, you won't just feel seen, you'll feel free. At first it feels like death. Letting go isn't graceful. It doesn't glide in like a monk with a bell and incense. It arrives like a storm, ripping, unraveling, demanding. And you don't let go because you're enlightened. You let go because you're exhausted. Because holding on has become heavier than your fear of falling. But here's the twist Buddhism teaches. You're not falling, you're finally landing. When you let go, not just mentally, but from the bone, you realize something radical. You were never in control to begin with. The plans you obsessed over, the person you tried to fix, the future you tried to guarantee, all of it was a rope you gripped so tightly it burned your palms, and now your hands are open. This is the secret. Freedom doesn't come from getting what you want. It comes from losing what you were never meant to keep. You let go of the version of you that always had the answer. You let go of the dream that never really fit your soul. You let go of trying to be good enough for people who never saw you to begin with. And suddenly, silence. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of peace. The inner war dissolves, because there's nothing left to defend. You no longer need to prove you're lovable. You no longer chase what always runs. You no longer contort yourself into a shape someone else will approve of. You just are. And in that being, you touch the core of Buddhist teaching. Non-attachment is not disconnection, it's clarity. It doesn't mean you stop loving. It means your love is no longer a transaction. It doesn't mean you stop dreaming. It means you no longer suffer if the dream changes form. It doesn't mean you stop grieving. It means grief no longer defines you. When you let go, you come home, not to a person or a place, but to the untouched stillness within. The Buddha said, "You only lose what you cling to, and what you cling to clings back. Fear clings to control, ego clings to identity, loneliness clings to fantasy. But the moment you loosen your grip, reality softens. You see your partner not as a savior, but as a fellow soul. You see your past not as a curse, but as a curriculum. You see your future not as a plan, but as a path unfolding. And the body responds. Breath deepens, jaw unclenches, sleep returns. The nervous system, long held hostage by what if, finally whispers, "I'm safe now." Letting go is not a moment. It's a practice. Sometimes hourly, sometimes breath by breath. You'll be tempted to reach back because the old struggle was familiar. That's okay. Just don't stay there. Because every time you choose surrender over struggle, truth over fantasy, presence over projection, you dissolve a layer of suffering. You become lighter, not because life changed, but because you did. You stopped trying to bend the world to your will, and you started letting it move through you like a river moves through the mountain, without force, without fear. This is not apathy. This is trust. Trust that what is meant for you won't require you to shrink. Trust that your deepest peace is not found in answers, but in allowing. Trust that the next version of you is already blooming beneath the wreckage of what you thought had to be. So let the tears come. Let the silence deepen. Let the letting go be messy. And then, watch what rushes in when you finally stop chasing what was never yours. There is a kind of peace that doesn't come from quiet rooms or soft music. It doesn't arrive because life has finally bent to your will, or because all your relationships are now harmonious. No, that kind of peace is fragile, dependent, conditional, and always at risk. But the peace I'm speaking of, the peace Buddhist wisdom whispers about, is of another flavor entirely. It's the peace that blooms in the center of your chaos. The one that rises not when everything goes right, but when you stop needing it to. It's a quiet so deep it can live inside the noise. A stillness so grounded it doesn't tremble even when the ground shakes. It's the kind of peace that can walk into grief and still bow to beauty, that can hold heartbreak in one hand and hope in the other, and not flinch. Where does it come from? It comes from finally understanding that nothing outside of you is truly yours to control. Not your partner, not your future, not even your next breath. The mind doesn't like this. It wants handles, certainty, ownership, but the soul, it sighs in relief, because the soul was never meant to hold so tightly. It was meant to receive, to respond, to resonate, not to wrestle with the wind. When you let go of the illusion of control, what's left is this: presence, a full body, full heart awareness that this moment, right here, right now, is all that's ever been real. And in that presence, anxiety has no room to root. Why? Because anxiety lives in the future, and presence doesn't. So if you're still carrying the question, how do I find peace? The answer is, stop running from what is. Stop fighting the life that's already unfolding in front of you. Even your suffering holds a key. Every wound has wisdom in it. Every ending is a disguised beginning. And peace, it comes when you stop arguing with reality. You may still feel pain, yes, but you'll stop turning it into identity. You may still feel longing, but it will no longer rob you of your gratitude. You may still feel afraid, but fear will no longer be the driver of your decisions. Because peace, true peace, isn't about removing discomfort. It's about stopping the war inside your head about what discomfort means. The Buddha didn't promise a life without pain. He offered a path to walk through it, with awareness, with kindness, and without chains. And so we arrive here, at the edge of the path. You've walked with me through longing, through letting go, through the fire of chaos and the breath of stillness. And now we bow. We bow to the relationships that taught us, to the illusions we released, to the versions of ourselves we've outgrown. And we bow to the peace that doesn't shout but waits, patiently, gently, eternally, inside the still place within us all. So maybe the point was never to master life. Maybe the point was simply to meet it, with open hands, an unguarded heart, and the kind of quiet that says, I no longer need to hold the world, I just need to be held by it. And that is a peace no one can take from you.